I'm very honored to be the bridge between the Chinese and Jewish relations in Atlanta. Today's event would not be possible without 4 partners, and they're Breman Museum, AGC, American Jewish Committee, Temple Emmanuel out of Sandy Spring, and Asian Arts Alliances. And I would like to first welcome Ms. Leslie Gordon to do a welcome remark. Ms. Gordon is a native of Savannah and an acclaimed Atlanta cultural leader. She has served as director of the Rialto Center for Arts at Georgia State University since 2003. And prior to that, Ms. Gordon played a leadership role with the National Black Arts Festival, the Art Festival of Atlanta, the 1996 Olympic Games Cultural Olympiad. She has been executive director at Breman since 2019. Welcome.
Thank you so much. So I'm really honored to be here and to be able to welcome you to this fabulous event. We are so happy, as Tracy said, to have Temple Emmanuel, an American Jewish Committee, and the Asian Arts Alliance of Georgia, the Chinese community of Georgia, participate today in something that's really special and important to us at the Breman. So we at the Breman are where story keepers and story seekers come together. And we engage in dialogue and experience the arts and in history. So to me today is a culmination of all 3 of those things. We have this amazing dialogue between the Chinese community and the Jewish community here now about a little known piece of history. And we have the arts because we're going to have a performance by this amazing chorus. And we're going to experience this together because being in here today is an experience, and then afterwards you'll be able to see the exhibition. So join us for all that we do. The next exhibition is with the Alliance Theater and the Opera about the costume designs of the Fiddler on the Roof. And we also have other exhibitions coming up, and we'd love to see you all back. But mostly, from the bottom of my heart, sorry I'm messing with the microphone, thank you, Tracy, and thank you, Temple Emmanuel, thank you, American Jewish Committee, and mostly the Asian Arts Alliance.
And next, we have a very special guest, Dov Wilker from AGC. Dov, after earning his international MBA from Tel Aviv University, Dov worked for an Israeli software startup. Dov began his career with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs in the southeastern United States. He has been the regional director at AGC since 2011.
Good afternoon and ni hao. It is an honor to be with you today to represent American Jewish Committee, a global advocacy organization that has engaged both with the Chinese people in China and with the Chinese diaspora for over 30 years. In fact, 1992 marked the beginning of important relations between the State of Israel and the government of China. And that led to the engagement of our local Jewish communities, both in Atlanta and across the United States, to better develop understanding and relationships between our 2 communities. Now, many people joke that on Christmas Eve, the best place to find a Jewish family is in a Chinese restaurant. But from the laughter, you clearly already knew that. But the important role that we play here today is in fostering relationships that deepen understanding between our communities and stories like the Jews in Shanghai. Now, many people are not aware of the fact that a former Israeli prime minister, actually his family, was saved by going to Shanghai during World War II. Others are not aware of the important and continuing relationships between our local communities, be it the food that we've already talked about, or the music, or the culture. But in order to create the strongest community possible, it's these types of events that we need to strengthen. So on behalf of the American Jewish Committee, I would like to thank everybody that is here today, but especially Temple Emmanuel, the Breman Museum, and the Chinese community in Atlanta for fostering and strengthening these ties. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. I know you're very busy, so thank you for making the time to be here. Next, I want to bring up a very special friend. I don't know him, but over the past few months, we've worked on several programs together, and he has become my friend. So Bob Grossman. Bob began his career in the Jewish community, communal field as the assistant director for B'nai B'rith Youth Organization. He later hosted ZAP, a children's television show for the ABC affiliate in Washington, D.C. Ultimately, he completed a career in the pharmaceutical industry. Now retired, Bob serves on the boards of the Lionheart Theater, the North Atlanta Men's Club, and the Zeta Beta Tau Atlanta Area Alumni Association. He also serves as a volunteer at a Hightower Elementary and with the Atlanta Jewish Film Festival. Welcome, Bob.
Wow, good afternoon, everyone. It is so wonderful to see so many shining faces here in the crowd. It's really an honor to be here with you today at the Breman for this particularly special program, one that so beautifully reflects the spirit of our partnership between members of the Atlanta Chinese community and Temple Emmanuel. When we first came together, our goal was simple. It was just to learn from one another, to explore our cultural traditions, and to discover the values that we share. But what has emerged is something truly meaningful. It's a growing friendship that is strengthened each time that we get together. We began the conversation. We had shared a remarkable meal together at the Yifan Restaurant and Cultural Center. And then here we are today, standing in a place of memory and history, reflecting on a story that actually binds our two communities in an extraordinary way. The story of the hidden Jews in Shanghai is not as well known as it probably should be. Yet during one of the darkest times in human history, tens of thousands of Jewish refugees found shelter and dignity in Shanghai. At great cost and under immense strain, the Chinese people welcomed strangers in need. And in doing so, they offered a lifeline that saved lives and persevered hope. This history matters not just because it's part of the Jewish story or the Chinese story, but because it is part of our shared human story. It reminds us that across cultures, across faiths, there exists a common thread: compassion, resilience, and the belief that we're all responsible for one another. Our partnership is about more than programs or events. It's really about relationships. And by gathering in settings like this, which we're so fortunate to do today, it's with food, with music, with history. It's in these type of situations that we begin to build bridges that endure. So we create bonds that remind us that while our backgrounds may be starkly different, our values often align. Today, as we honor the memory of those who lived through this chapter of history, may we also honor the example that it gives us, that friendship between peoples is not only possible, it's actually essential. Thank you to our friends in the Chinese community for walking this journey with us, and to the Breman for hosting us in this place of memory and meaning. I look forward to the many chapters of friendship and understanding that still lie ahead. And thank you all for being here. Now, you've already had an opportunity to see and hear Tracy, but I'd like to give you a little background on who Tracy really is. Tracy is the cultural liaison for Chinese-Jewish relations in Atlanta. She is also the executive director at Gallagher, one of the world's largest publicly traded global insurance brokerage, risk management, and consulting firms. Prior to Gallagher, she held various global management roles at AIG in Chicago, New York, and Hong Kong. She started her career with the U.S. Embassy's Foreign Commercial Service in Beijing, and Tracy is also a certified cross-cultural consultant and executive coach. She's an active community leader. She currently serves on Emory University's Board of Visitors, and I am so thrilled that this powerhouse has really helped us put this program together today. Tracy, come on back.
Thank you, Bob, so much. Thank you so much. The Chinese Jewish civilization each has over 5,000 years of history. Both people come from very diverse backgrounds, once living in lands known by many different names, and both have migrated across the globe. It is truly remarkable that today we stand together here with one identity, American. Rooted in ancient and proud tradition, rich with history, art, wisdom, both of our community have also faced immense struggles, enduring famine, war, and man-made disasters. Yes, here we are, tall and strong. Today, we gather at the Breman Museum not only to remember the darkest chapter of the human history, but also to celebrate the resilience and compassion that carried us through those trials. Surrounded by the memory of the Holocaust of 6 million lost lives, we are reminded of humanity's shared pain. It also brings to mind the Nanking Massacre in 1937, when nearly 300,000 Chinese perished with the Japanese invasion. Both tragedies carved deep scars into our collective psyche. Yet, through such devastation, peace emerged, because humanity has the capacity to learn through the suffering. We remember not only the atrocities, but also the acts of courage and compassion that shines through the darkness. We honor individuals like Oskar Schindler and He Fengshan, the Chinese General Consul in Austria, who issued thousands of visas to Jewish refugees fleeing Europe. At a time when so many doors were closing, China's heart remained open. The act of kindness is more than history. It is a living reminder of what becomes possible when humanity rises above fear and prejudice. We also honor the thousands of American pilots, known as Flying Tigers, who gave their young lives in China to help liberate the country from Japanese occupation. Their sacrifice is a powerful example of the bond when people come together to fight for justice and freedom. I was drawn into this work because I believe that when we take the time to learn each other's stories and connect on an individual level, we discover that the threads that bind us are far stronger than the differences that divide us. Those connections do not happen overnight. They grow slowly through care, respect, and shared experiences. This is why I'm so passionate about this work. It's about people. It's about friendship. It's about seeing each other not as strangers, but as neighbors. My hope is that when you leave here today, you carry a piece of that connection with you into your homes, your families, and your communities. Let us continue to tell those stories, to learn from one another, and to build a world that whenever someone is in need, the answer is always, yes, you're welcome here. On behalf of the Chinese community in Atlanta, I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for opening your heart, and thank you for walking the bridge with us. Thank you very much. And next, come to the most important part of this program. And I'm going to welcome Rabbi Joseph Press. Rabbi Press has been teaching about Judaism and Holocaust for over 20 years, and is currently the director of the Weinberg Center for Holocaust Education. He has taught about the Holocaust in school, colleges, and synagogues. He's going to give us the story about the Jewish in Shanghai.
Thank you so much. It is an absolute honor to give you this tour through the story of the history of the Jews of Shanghai. It is an amazing presentation in our gallery, and I hope afterwards you will go into the gallery, get a closer look at the artifacts, and to get up close with these primary sources of living history that has affected so many around the world, and indeed, even members of our own Atlanta Jewish community here. So, there we go. So, to begin with, the hidden history of the Jews of Shanghai. This little known story about the Jews of Shanghai comes together in the 20th century from largely three different sources, getting this confluence of Jews. There was a large influx of Iraqi Jews who arrived in the mid-1800s. There were Russian Jews who were fleeing the pogroms at the turn of the century, and there were German and Austrian Jews who were escaping the Nazis. And we're going to explore all of these themes this afternoon, very quickly. But in order to understand how do they get there, we also have to understand how did a nice Jewish community get there in the first place? What led to Jews saying, Shanghai is a place that we can go and will be received and find a little bit of refuge? So we begin with answer number one, the Silk Road. The Silk Road, as many of us know, extends back before the Common Era, about the 2nd century before the Common Era, and that people will be making that overland trek to try and get to the opportunities that lay for them in China. Well, along those roads were Jewish communities. And in those Jewish communities, individuals spoke a common language. And so in order as these individuals would be going and these treks would be making their way from east to west and back, the Jews offered an opportunity to share documents, to provide a common language. We can see that in the gallery, when you go in, you'll even see one of the artifacts there. Here is a document that dates back to the 8th century. We don't have some going all the way back before the Common Era, but you will see a copy of this document where Jewish merchants use their unique ability to use Hebrew to communicate across these areas and to be able to make the connection as merchants went from city to city, from area to area. And they would bring back reports. China is a land of opportunity. There is wonderful wealth, resources, and beautiful people who are so accepting here in China. And that is going to come into play as we move forward in history just a little bit further. But to exemplify that, we can bring in Kaifeng. Kaifeng was an opportunity for Jews to make a new community there. Going back to around the year 1000, Jews began to settle in Kaifeng. Kaifeng is a wonderful opportunity to discuss what happens when there's absolutely largely no anti-Semitism. In Kaifeng, Jews were accepted. Jews were allowed to practice their religion. Jews faced none of that anti-Semitism we faced around the world, where it caused us to retract into our own communities. And as time went along, Jews began to adopt many of the practices of their neighbors, of Confucianism, of Chinese culture. And we see in the gallery itself, you will see this lovely kippah, a ritual object that Jews would wear. But if you look closely, you see it? Those beautiful embroidery that would have symbols of China, of the lotus, of the flowers that are in China. As well, we have a diagram, a picture of one of the oldest synagogues in the world, dating back to 1163. And in the top right, you will see some Kaifeng Jews in an actual picture from the 19th century. This was a beautiful community that sprung up and was in existence all the way to the beginning of our 20th century. Answer number 2. How does a Jewish community spring up? We look to the Baghdadi Jews. Jews in the area of Baghdad had existed for hundreds, thousands of years. As exiles had been brought from the land of Israel into what was Persia, and then moved forward through regime after regime down to the Ottoman Empire, this strong Jewish community was in existence. But as Ottoman governors began to persecute the Jews more and more, they began to flee. Some fled back towards Palestine, some fled towards Europe, and some fled east. We look in particular to the Sassoon family, who will loom large in our story of how Jews got there. David Sassoon is going to flee Baghdad for Bombay. He will arrive in Bombay, India in 1830. But he will have many sons, and one of those sons in particular, Elias, in 1845 is going to go and try and make his fortune further east in the city of Shanghai. And we'll pick up with the story of the Sassoons, but just a few decades later, Eli Kaduri is going to arrive in Bombay, and then we'll move on into Shanghai as well. These two families are going to create that wonderful opportunity for Jews to migrate to this accepting and open city in Shanghai. And we add to history, the end of the Opium Wars between the British and the Chinese are going to open up 5 cities throughout the territories for international trade. Shanghai is going to be one of those. It's going to open to foreign business and settlement, and under the treaty, foreigners will not be subject to Chinese law. And as we approach the Holocaust, when thousands are going to flood in, that particular document, that particular rule is going to prove a lifeline for the Jewish community. The Sassoons, in this 4th largest city in the world, they are going to set up all kinds of opportunities. As you see, the Sassoon family, as soon as they arrive in 1845, will provide opportunities for employment. They will found Jewish institutions, synagogues, cemeteries, schools that will create an opportunity that if a Jew wants to move there, there is an opportunity to continue to practice your life as a Jew. The Kaduris, who will come a little bit later, likewise will set up educational and business opportunities. Among those will be, we're going to come back to those in just a few minutes. Another answer, the Trans-Siberian Railroad. The Trans-Siberian Railroad offered an opportunity no longer over land, no longer over sea, but in a relatively comfortable, short ride on the railroad, Jews could make it from one end of Europe all the way to the end of China. Here you see a diagram that if Jews can make it as far as Moscow, you can take a train all the way to the other end of the continent. I have circled there Harbin. Harbin was a particularly important community just off the Siberian Railroad. In the Pale of Settlement, that area of Eastern Europe, Western Russia, where pogroms would happen time after time. Pogroms, an organized riot against the Jewish community. You heard that we have the pictures of our next exhibition, Fiddle on the Roof, a pogrom, where Jews would be, in their villages, would be subject to the Russians coming through to burn down villages, to conscript young men. Jews, if they had the means, could board the Trans-Siberian Railroad and in much more safety make it from one end to the other. And in doing so, this helped to grow villages. The Harbin Jewish community had over 10,000 Jews living in that community alone, thanks to the Trans-Siberian Railroad. In 1903, when the Jewish community was established, it was just 500. By 1930, we're going to reach that 10,000 number. And as they look to say, well, should we return to the Pale of Settlement, it's not going to get any better. The Japanese occupation of Manchuria in 1931 is going to keep many of these Jews on this side of the continent. With the return of the Soviet Union to other places throughout Europe, even after the war, returning is not going to be an option, which is going to create the opportunity to move down to Shanghai, all the more important. In our exhibition, you will find the story of Dora Medavoy, born in Harbin in 1921, who will leave for Shanghai. I'm going to return to her in just a few moments. Here you'll see just an example, a close-up of how some of the people getting to Harbin were in this general area off to the side. Well, let's return to Shanghai. Shanghai is Paris of the East, the fourth largest city with these prominent Baghdadi families. It offered opportunities. Shanghai is going to be divided up into the old city, as well as the French concession and the international section. With this, in the beginning of the 20th century, there weren't that many Jews. About 1,000 Jews had come from Baghdad, about 500 Jews from Germany pre the middle of the 1930s, pre-1935. The French concession had some Russian and Ukrainian Jews numbering about 6,000, and the Chinese district not quite as many, due to the fact that in the other two concessions, the Kaduris and the Sassoons had built a wonderful religious life and opportunity for them. As we take a look at some of the pictures, in some ways it would be hard to distinguish for some of them from Europe or other parts of the world, but you look in the background, we see Chinese businesses, but the clothing that they're wearing, the rituals that they're doing, for those in the Jewish community might recognize a Jewish wedding canopy right there. Jewish life is existing, it's thriving, it's continuing, and it's being sent back home. This is a place that we can exist, that we can thrive, and that we don't face anti-Semitism like we do back in Europe. Here you'll see just a quick snapshot of Shanghai, the old Chinese city, the French concession, the international settlement, the famous Nanking Road, where many of these wonderful businesses that will exist even after the war continue to grow, thrive, and see these international buildings. There are also many of these opportunities that I spoke about. The Sassoons and the Kaduris, as well as other international agencies, set up resettlement opportunities. For example, Beitar, a Zionist youth movement that would help for the organization, the self-policing of the Jews when they would settle in China. There was the Shanghai Volunteer Corps, again, helping to resettle. HIAS, the international resettlement agency that originally was set up to help settle Jews in the United States, but also around the world. For Jews being settled here, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society would help provide funding, bridge loans, so that these people would not be a burden on society. And again, Sir Victor Sassoon converted 7 floors of one of his buildings into a refugee resettlement organization. The Kaduri School provided support and education, so that for these Jews back, they would say, this is really a land of opportunity. But we have to ask, why would they need this opportunity? What were they fleeing from? So we come to the second part of our understanding, the escape from Nazi terror. For some, this is a familiar story. For others, it's not. That the Nazis capitalized on European anti-Semitism. European anti-Semitism went back centuries in Europe. That it went back as old as the blood libels of medieval Europe. False accusations that Jews were kidnapping Christian children to make matzah out of, that it continued and perpetuated into the 18th, 19th, 20th century. The Nazis capitalized upon it. In newspapers, they would put posters. That they would put out pictures of Jewish capitalists. This is from the 1924. As rampant inflation is coming throughout Germany and then soon the rest of the world, the factory workers would look on and see that we have to work for an entire day just to provide a loaf of bread. This stereotypic Jew with the big nose, the dark curly hair, standing over these workers, holding the strings of the workers. He's not working for food. He is not struggling with economic distress. No, he is the other. He is the enemy. And at the bottom, you see the swastikas. The Nazis, not even formally into power, are perpetuating these myths. And on the right, on the right, you see another picture. A poster of, on the bottom, the protocols of the elders of Zion, in plain old English, the minutes of a meeting of a bunch of old Jews that got together and were talking about how they'd take over the world. But it's a myth. It's an absolute myth, perpetuated by the Russian secret police, because under Russia, under communism, life's not always so good. And so they said, but you don't want to be under Jews. Look what they would do if they took over. But this was spread around the world. You'll notice at the top, the peril juif, the Jewish danger. So this Russian lie ends up in France, it ends up in England, it ends up in Italy, it ends up in Germany, it even ends up in the United States, translated by none other than Henry Ford, among others, that you would understand about the danger of the Jews trying to take over. So there's all these lies. Adolf Hitler comes to power in 1933, January. And with it, they immediately begin passing law after law after law, creating an opportunity for the Nazis to strip the Jews of their rights. That in 1935, the Jews will be labeled as non-citizens. The Nazis will label them as a race in the Nuremberg laws. Soon, Jews will have their passports and paper stamped with a big red J for Jew or Juif. They can't be businessmen, they can't be lawyers, they can't be in civil service. There's over 400 laws. We would be here all day if I went through them. That Nazis would boycott in front of businesses. Woolworths isn't a Jewish business, but they decided it was, so they boycotted in front of it. And the world gets together in 1938 in Evian, France. Many of the nations get together and say, what can we do? This is wrong. Jews are being imprisoned. And here is a picture from the New York Times showing the Jew had nowhere to go. Nowhere to go, and I would include the United States among that. The United States didn't change its immigration laws. And so the Jews had to look elsewhere. They had to look for an escape as the walls are beginning to close in. But we're not done yet. On November 9th and 10th, 1938, Kristallnacht, throughout Germany and Austria, Germans riot against the Jews. For indeed true, a low-level diplomat was shot and killed in France. But for that, the Nazis rail against the Jewish community. Synagogues are burnt just to the stone facades that they had. Jewish businesses on the right are looted, ransacked, and destroyed. The glass on the front shows Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. And for the mess that the Jewish community made, they were fined 1 billion Reichsmarks, 1 billion units of currency, to have that cleaned up for the mess they made by having their businesses destroyed. And 91 individuals are killed on that night. More will die of their injuries in the days and weeks to come. And 30,000 Jewish men are rounded up and taken to the first of the concentration camps. You see there on the bottom, Buchenwald, one of the first of the camps. 10,000 men imprisoned there. Their only crime, they were Jewish. And so the Jews of Germany began to see, we need to get out. Going to the West isn't going to happen. Where else can we go? Shanghai. This wonderful opportunity with all of these synagogues, these places that will help train us, that will help to resettle us, that help to organize us, that will help to provide us with our safety, Shanghai. And so, we see here a map, but let me get to the really important map. 15 to 18,000 Jews are going to flee towards Shanghai, that city that didn't require all the same paperwork that the other nations of the world did. That city that said you can come in, the city that did not have the same kind of anti-Semitism that we found in so many other cities around, countries around the world. We also have to thank some of the heroes that are out there. We have to thank Consul General Dr. Feng Shang-ho. From his embassy in Vienna, his position, he provided visas for those to make the perilous trek. In doing so, he defied his government. In doing so, he was told to stop doing it. But an amazing quote. We all need to remember this. Seeing the Jews so doomed, it was only natural to feel deep compassion from a humanitarian standpoint, to be impelled to help them. Thanks to Dr. Ho, Jews were able to escape the coming Nazi onslaught. Jews were able to make it there and to find refuge in Shanghai. He continued to issue visas right up until the moment he was recalled in December of 1941. And so we see Jews are now making the trek overland, Trans-Siberian Railroad. Jews are making the route over through the ocean trek. And to illustrate just a little bit, I said there's a lot of opportunities. There was a great Jewish presence in Shanghai. You can't quite see the map, the key at the bottom, but let me bring it a little closer. Synagogue. There we go. Another synagogue. We have the cemetery that we have for the Jewish community. We have another, the Ohel Rachel Synagogue. We can have the new synagogue, Shanghai Jewish Hospital, and Shereth Israel Synagogue. In this one city, we have 5 different synagogues. We have a hospital, we have the cemetery. When a Jewish community goes somewhere, tries to set up, it's already set up for these refugees. But all of these Jews moving in with 1941 and World War, with 1939, with the advent of World War II and 1941, the United States joining in the Pacific Theater, things begin to change. Jews who had been settled throughout Greater Shanghai begin to be put into the Hongqiu Ghetto. The Hongqiu Ghetto was this little area that was in the Upper East Side. It was not a very desirable piece of land. It was rather swampy, and yet when the Chinese would try to shelter the Jewish community, when the Japanese moved in and took over Hong Kong, and with the outbreak of Pearl Harbor, the laws began to change. On February 18, 1938, the Hongqiu Ghetto became a designated area for stateless refugees. And with the arrival of Nazi Colonel Joseph Messinger, also known as the Butcher of Warsaw, Jews were now told that they all must relocate to the Hongqiu Ghetto. Here we have one of the signs that is in the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. And this shows that stateless refugees are prohibited to pass here without permission. Jews had to move into the ghetto and were not allowed to leave without permission. There were guards at the entrances, Japanese guards, and into this one square mile, nearly 20,000 people are going to be crammed in. And we'll see some pictures of that in just a minute. The conditions of the ghetto were terrible. Electricity and coal and food were rationed. There was malnutrition. There was typhus. The ghetto boundaries were marked, they were guarded, and the Jews could not leave. But even as the Nazis demanded that the Jews be relocated, the war was not going well back in Europe. And by relocated, I mean put on ships and barges, sent back to concentration camps, or in some cases put on barges. One of Messinger's suggestions was put them on barges, take them out in the ocean, and sink the ships. But as the war wound down in Europe, as the Nazis were defeated, The Hongqiu Ghetto is going to be liberated. As the Japanese surrender on August 14, 1945, the Japanese would still remain for about another month until the Allies would arrive. And when they did, one day, as many of the refugees who were sheltered in the Hongqiu Ghetto said, they walked out, and the Japanese were gone, and they were free. They didn't stay in the Hongqiu Ghetto for long, though. With the coming communist revolution, many of these already stateless refugees sought refuge in other places. They would soon begin to move on, not yet, but they would soon begin to move on to other areas. They would move to the British Mandate of Palestine. They would continue to try and get to the United States of America, South Africa, and Australia. By the time the communists took control of Shanghai, most of the Jewish community had left. I want to share with you two short stories from two of the featured stories that we have in our exhibition. And I have to thank Jane Levy, our curator of the exhibition, who has made it so easy for you to see these stories and the artifacts that go with them. But one of the stories I just really want to show you is the Medavoy family, because this links several of our pieces. For the Medavoy story, Dora Ozer was born in Harbin. She was born there in 1921, but remember, as I told you, many of the community from Harbin are going to seek refuge now down in Shanghai. And so the Ozer family is going to flee Harbin and come down to Shanghai. That refuge is going to be short-lived, as the Nazis and the Japanese will take control and put them in a ghetto. But in that ghetto, opportunity will rise. That she will meet her future husband, Michael Medavoy, who was born in the Ukraine in 1918, who fled from the Nazis to Shanghai. The two will meet there, and they will meet in Beitar, one of those self-governing, self-protecting organizations, in 1939. They will form not just a friendship, not just a relationship, but they will form a family. And with that family, they're going to leave for the United States. They first immigrate to Chile, and then to the United States. But to show that every story can lead to, we don't know what, a cure for cancer, a Pulitzer Prize-winning article, it can lead to anything. And in this particular case, it led to an award-winning documentarian, filmmaker, and producer in Hollywood. And just a real quick show, their son, Mike, is a Hollywood producer, and he gave us a flavor of what life was like in the Shanghai ghetto. It's only about 3 minutes long.
My dad said either be a doctor or a lawyer. You're Jewish. I didn't become either one of those two. I found a lot of young kids that were coming up that I really liked their work. Spielberg, Lucas, Coppola, Ashby, Crichton. They were the kind of films that I got involved in making, you know, whether it's One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, or Rocky, or Apocalypse Now, or Platoon, or you name it. All these movies that are on these walls are films that I basically helped get there. The history about how my parents got to Shanghai. In 1919 or 1920, it's one of those 2 years, my grandfather, who lived in the Ukraine, got a letter from his sister. And his sister had escaped to Gulag, Siberia, and is a Jew, and she found Shanghai. She got to Shanghai. She sent my grandfather a letter with a photograph. Basically, the letter said, the Jews can survive in Shanghai because it seems to be okay with it. The Jews that came in later, everybody that came in, there was an organization that my father was a part of, and my mother was a part of, which brought Jews to Shanghai and then helped them. They would meet them at the dock, put them on the bus, on one of the trucks actually, and take them to these apartments, which were on the embankment. They stayed there until they could find a job and move on. And that was unique. that time when you think about World War II. Shanghai was an open port, and everybody could go there, not need a passport. It's also the first place I went to the movies. Went to see a movie. It's the first time that my imagination started working on what the world was like outside of where I was living. It obviously had a big effect on me. My parents, they lived a life in Shanghai and passed it on to me. They survived. That was the whole thing, was, how to survive. And that's basically me too. I'm a survivor. I'm a child of people who survived. And that's probably a big part of it. Many people who've been a part of our Shanghai experience, I believe.
Mike Medavoy is just one example. That there are politicians, there are businessmen, there are lawyers, there are business people, shopkeepers, school teachers that are descendants of these amazing Jews who found shelter in Shanghai. I see my time is coming in, so I'm going to skip through just a little bit of the Culver family. I encourage you to take a look. It shows some amazing pieces that, for those who are familiar with the Jewish wedding document, the ketubah. This usually in Hebrew document, but here we have a ketubah, a marriage license, that you will notice both with the Asian script going up and down, and when you go in, you'll see that they sign like Westerners at a right angle to all of that. So to see the cross, the sharing of cultures has just an amazing exhibition that you should take a look at. But I want to bring you to the last piece of our walkthrough of the gallery, and that is in the center section, documenting what went on right after the war. Arthur Rothstein was born in 1915 in New York City. He was a photographer during the Great Depression, the Dust Bowl, and the New Deal programs. In 1943, he enlisted in the United States Army and was assigned as photographer to the Army Signal Corps in China. And after the war, he joined the United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, often called UNRWA, UNRRA in China. And just as the ghetto was being liberated, he was right there on the spot to document what was happening in the Shanghai ghetto. And so his pictures tell an amazing story. Then here you see a picture, a photograph of dozens of anxious refugees sorting through piles of incoming mail. They were looking for good news, they were looking for bad news, they were looking for word for what happened to their relatives back in Europe. They were also looking for a response from the various state departments of if they could immigrate to one of the many countries that they were making an application to. This picture speaks 1,000 words. It talks about the unfathomable challenge faced by this group of displaced persons. After the war, news was slow to arrive, and the stranded refugees in China were looking for any word of their relatives back in Germany and Austria. And we didn't have the phones, they didn't have the communication. They were looking for newspapers, lists that are posted up and were sent around the world of those survivors and those who had perished. In this poignant photograph, Jewish refugees in Shanghai are searching a list of concentration camp survivors. You can see the crowding, you can see how they were in these walls and how they commemorated what they felt were their liberators after the war was over in 1946 with hastily painted murals. There's a fun little shot. These are some Jews enjoying matzo ball soup made in the traditional charcoal-heated Chinese fire pot. Not sure whether it was Passover or not, but there they are cooking their matzo balls. And so I hope that you will have the opportunity to go in to look, to see this incredible and rich history that is in this story of the hidden Jews of Shanghai. Every story that we at the Breman or anyone tells about the Holocaust, it's never in this short little bubble. It is always about what came before and what is the resilience of the community. How did they go on to build lives? What was their impact in the world? And how that story should never, ever be forgotten. So I thank you for taking the time to listen to me to provide this very brief story of the hidden Jews of Shanghai. Thank you.
Information through a Rabbi Press presentation. Thank you so much for the in-depth presentation. I want to be your students. But actually, interestingly, passing this phase of history, Jewish also made a major contribution to China's modern economy. The Kadura family, who actually was put into prison after communists took over China, later went back to Hong Kong. And not only they run the electrical power station, when China opened the door in the 1970s, they also helped the modernization of China. So their profound impact. So with that, I'd like to welcome the choir to come to the stage to provide music for our audience. At the same time, we would like to use this opportunity to introduce some VIP guests.
Thank you, Tracy. So let me just introduce some of the VIPs from the Jewish community that are here with us today. First, I'd like to acknowledge members of the American Jewish community. If you would stand, thank you, just be recognized. Thank you very much. I'd also like to recognize Rabbi Spike Anderson, our senior rabbi at Temple Emmanuel. Unfortunately, it was very poor timing today because it was the board retreat, and so he is unable to be here. I'm remiss. I'd also like to acknowledge Ariana Gill. She is the volunteer and education manager here at the Breman. Ariana, where are you? In the back.
I'm here managing volunteers.
Thank you. Next, I'd like to acknowledge Michael and Elaine Gutenstein. They are the founders of the Hidden Story exhibit. I also like to acknowledge Jane Levy, the exhibitor's curator that Rabbi Press mentioned earlier. And also give a shout out to Allie White. She's the director of marketing and communications here at the Breman. Allie, are you here? Okay. And a very special guest that I'd like to acknowledge is Raya Zalik. Raya is sitting in the front row, and actually she was born in Shanghai, so it was a living part of this history. Raya, would you wave your hand and say hello? Thank you for being here. Last but not least, I want to introduce my partner in crime, Mr. Neil Lipsky. Neil is the co-chair with myself for Temple Emmanuel for the Interfaith, Intercultural Outreach Program. I'm going to turn it over to Tracy now to introduce some other significant individuals here.
Well, Neil, can I have you to stand up first? I want to introduce Neil as my trusted advisor and my heart and brain collaborator, and happen to be my husband. With very important guests from the Chinese community. And first and most important, Mr. Song Yang. Mr. Song is the president of Asian Arts Alliance. He is a tenor, pianist, educator, and conductor. He was a principal of Yunnan Art Academy before coming to the US. Then devoted to US-China cultural exchange for 30 years. He's the director and producer for the 80th anniversary of World War II Victory Concert. And I would like to introduce Roger Zhao, who is the chairman. Mr. Eric Lin, former professor at Emory, and Alan Gao, at the Board of Directors, and Jinhai from Feng Jinhai, Board of Directors. And I would also like to thank 3 people, Leslie Liu, who's the anchor at the back, who are holding the camera, and photographer, Jiang Shen and Tang Yi. And I want to thank all the choir members here.
Thank you very much. We are very honored to be here today. We are prepared the screen machine, but however, didn't work out. So, and we have some questions printed on your hands. Maybe you can read it. But we're going to sing 3 songs. The first song is a song of the Yellow River Bowman. Second one is a ballad of Yellow River. And the third song is the Defend Yellow River. Thank you.
我们是黄河的儿女，我们艰苦奋斗，一天天接近胜利。但是，敌人一天不消灭，我们便一天不得安身。不信，请听听河东民众痛苦的呻吟。
So
Can you hear me now? Ariana, thank you. Well, that was quite a treat. I know I share the enthusiasm. That was extraordinary. So while the choir is filing out, I want to share some information about a very, very special and upcoming program that I would love for all of you to participate in. In commemoration of the 80th anniversary of World War II, the Asian Arts Alliance is collaborating with numerous associations to present a very powerful evening of music celebrating unity and resilience. The Atlanta International Symphony Orchestra is going to be joined by renowned soloists to perform a selection of iconic American works, including the theme from Schindler's List, Bernstein's Overture to Candide, and Copland's Fanfare for the Common Man. This incredible musical event is going to feature 300 choir members. You saw just a small sampling of that, but this was about 60 people. There'll be 5 times as many choir members on the stage. This choir that Mr. Song has put together will be coming from all across the United States to represent and to present a stirring rendition of the Yellow River Cantata. And so I want to make you aware that this event at Atlanta Symphony Hall will take place on Sunday, September 21st at 6:30 p.m. We invite you to join for a very special night that transcends borders through the universal language of music. I also want to make you aware that today, if you would allow us, there's a table set up out front. You can purchase tickets today at a significant discount, $20 off each ticket. And this is a rare opportunity. There are no other discounts available. So if you're interested, we would love for you to purchase them on your way out today. I hope that you enjoyed the presentation by Mr. Song and the wonderful chorus from the Asian Arts Alliance. And again, thank you for being here.
We're going to open all our doors here, and we have 3 exhibitions open for you. Of course, the Shanghai exhibition, which brought us all here today, but also Absence of Humanity, if you want to learn more about the history of the Holocaust. And also, we have an exhibition called History with Chutzpah that has kind of a magic entrance. 290 years of the Jewish presence in Georgia. So please join us in the galleries, and we will stay open as long as you are here. And Tracy, thank you for letting us help build these bridges together.
All the audience who participate in the program today. And I want to again thank all the partners, AGC, Breman Museum, Temple Emmanuel, Asian Arts Alliance. Please continue to follow us. We're going to have a youth involvement from next year, so wait for our new program. Thank you.